Today on Front End Fire, there are some big Angular updates and a new Angular mascot. Zod 4 is out and it's faster, slimmer, and TypeScript-ier than ever. There's a new package that adds rules for your Vibe coding. And we have more details on what Remix 3 is and what it isn't. It's a jam-packed episode, so let's do it. Hey everybody, I'm TJ Van Tol. I have Paige Niedringhouse with me.
Hey everyone.
And Jack Harrington.
Hola.
And welcome to Front End Fire, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the latest and the greatest in the front end world. We've got a lot of releases this week. It seemed like this was if you have a framework, this is the time you put out your new version or talk about your new version.
There you go.
Yep.
So let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want to kick us off this week? There's some Zod updates.
Sure. Yes. So Zod 4 is out. It has been 4 years since the last major release of Zod. And for those of you who are less familiar, it is a TypeScript first validation library. So you write one schema and then you can use it on the front end and the back end because it does type safety and runtime checks all in one. So you don't have to have front end and back end validation for form submissions and just anything that you want basically that is that you want to be type safe and work through an API. So Zod 4, of course, has plenty of performance improvements. It is 7 times faster for array and object parsing. It has,
diggity.
Yeah. And that's on the low end of things. They have a lot of improvements. 14 times faster in string parsing. So
It's like oddly specific, but okay.
I know. I guess because it was so much better, they wanted to include that as its own,
But 14 times. Yeah.
Well, but
Yeah.
like, if you're a type validation library, I feel like parsing strings is pretty core to what you do. Like, I feel like that's like kind of your game.
Mm-hmm.
It does make me wonder when it does make me wonder when I see these, like what optimizations made it 14 times faster? Like,
Right,
it seems like
exactly.
there might have been some low-hanging fruit here.
Right. I mean, regex, like it's kind of you do or you don't. Like, I don't know how you, okay, but whatever.
Yeah, sure. I mean, cool.
They did a complete rewrite. The whole thing of why it's this major version is because it had to be rewritten from the ground up in order to do these new performance improvements, enhancements, additions. So I don't know. Maybe they're just 4 years ago there wasn't stuff available that now there is that made it faster. Who really knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this isn't Rust, right? Because this is all runtime, so it's got to be JavaScript. So yeah.
Or
As far for now, you never know what the future holds. But yes, so it's 7 times faster for array and object parsing. It has 100% reduction in TSC instantiations, which I think is just how it checks all the different things inside of a schema. It has a two-time reduction in core bundle size from Zod 3, so they've made it just that much smaller. And yeah, I mean, there's a new thing called Zod Mini, which is a tree shakeable API that is a one-to-one correspondence with Zod, but it's good for if you have like an edge runtime where you want to run Zod and you really need it to be as small as possible. This can help you do that. There is a new system for strongly typed metadata in schemes. So if you need to attach metadata to different schemes or you want to, there's a way to do that. And they have pretty printing built in because that was a super popular extension that people wanted with Zod. So they just built it in.
Yeah. The errors were a straight misery.
Oh, yeah.
Like you never want to give the Zod errors directly to the customer because they were just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I had to work with a schema this week that not Zod related, but just a schema in general. And I was getting these data dumps and debugging was nonsense because I would copy and paste the stupid thing. And then I'd like bring up some random JSON formatter on the internet and have formatting everything. And it was a nightmare. So I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
so
name
good
for a
Zod.
library, Zod. And fantastic library. I love that we have this and that it is so powerful and that it's named Zod is just like an extra added bonus.
I mean, it's taken off in popularity. Like if you look at the number of GitHub stars and the NPM weekly downloads, it is exploded and it is so good. Like I've used it too. It's great. It's really nice to work with. It's easy to understand. And yeah, it just helps you be TypeScript safe from front to back with no redundancies.
Yeah.
And it's way faster, apparently, now too. So,
there you go.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I end up pulling it into a bunch of libraries just for, like, oh, okay, I'm going to be fetching this JSON blob. Okay, run it through Zod, see if it works, and then get back crappy error messages that are at least better than, what I would have done. But not now because we have pretty printing built in. So that's great. There you go. Nice.
Awesome. Well, Jack, I think moving on from this, you said this was going to be related somehow, and I'm not sure how, because I know we're talking about vibe coding somehow, some way. So you want to transition this for me?
Well, okay. So if you want to use all these cool new features of Zod, you actually have to use like Zod/v4, and even now, I think even when it's released, you have to kind of like import a different way from Zod, I think. And so that kind of brings up the idea that like the LLMs might not be trained on this version of Zod with these new features, right? And so what you really want, you want custom rules for Zod v4 in your project to say, hey, if when we use Zod, we want to use it this way. And so there's this new thing out called, well, in this case, a package called Vibe Rules. It's actually a command line. So you can just do like pmpx, vibe rules, and then say, hey, I'm working on cursor, so do this in cursor and in cursor format. So what it does is it goes through all of your libraries in your node modules and then sees if there is LLM instructions embedded in those libraries, and then it hoists those up into wherever is appropriate for, the Claude stuff or, Cursor or Windsurf or anything like that. And so what's really cool is, right, you can bake the LLM instructions into your package and have them versioned to your package. And so I just did this with Tanstack's React Router, and it's cool. Like all you got to do is just install Tanstack's React Router and then do this vibe rules thing, maybe on your own project as like a prepare inside of your package JSON, and it just hoists it up, gets it ready to go, and now you've got all these specific instructions for, in this case, Tanstack React Router, right, which is great. And so for as an example with Zod v4, it can literally say, hey, cool, this is the rules for how to use v4, and we recommend that and all that. So I think it's pretty cool. And I think it's an interesting idea that we're starting to like bake the Markdown 4 instructions into the libraries. And maybe it's not just good for LLMs, maybe it's good for us too, right? Maybe we can actually like kind of start to expose those like in the editor itself. So as you're like consuming this library as a human, you get the editor actually says, oh, okay, well, there's stuff embedded in the library. But it's very early days. I mean, the Vibe Rules package was only released like a couple of weeks ago. There's, not a huge amount of downloads. It's not really a standard, I don't think, yet.
Yeah.
So it's something to keep an eye on, but I don't know.
It seems like a really good idea, actually, because you're right. People are starting to think about how they can use MCP servers for their own projects or for NPM packages or libraries that we've traditionally downloaded. So just having those rules and then having an IDE that's smart enough to bubble them up to the top so that your Copilot or your Claude or whoever is aware of it. That's such a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think, who was it? Daichi Kato did like a specific MCP server for Jotai, right? And all it did was just bring in Markdown for the Jotai docs. And you're like, do I really want to install an MCP server for that?
Just for that?
Man, that's crazy, right? But if it were just built into the Jotai NPM lib, right? And it just got brought up, there you go. And that you'd have the same thing for Jotai and Zod and all the rest of the packages that you just installed, and they all be versioned. It makes a whole lot more sense to me than doing it as an MCP server. Like an MCP server is supposed to do stuff for you. It's not just supposed to have like a bunch of docs. Right. That doesn't make much. I don't know. That didn't make any sense to me.
I kind of went through some of this process because I spent on and off for about 3 or so weeks. I was upgrading one of our big apps to React 19 and Next 15. And so it was a long running branch that I was switching onto and off of all the time. So I was going from, React 19 back to 18 and Next 15 back to whatever. Yeah. And when I did bust out AI, it would get confused sometimes because I'm going back and forth. And in hindsight, I probably should have manually added to like my rules and made it a part of the branch or whatever. I could have been smarter about this. But the thing is, having some way that kind of automates part of this is, I think, a really good idea so that you don't have to constantly teach the LLM like, oh, that's right, you're giving me the wrong answer because you don't know that I'm on React 19 now. And that wasted a few minutes there.
Yeah. And I mean, if it really turns out to be super useful, which I think it's going to be, then maybe it'll just become a standard of libraries or of everybody's stuff. You have a README, you have a package JSON, and you have a rules or an LLM.txt or something like that everybody just includes. And it gets pulled up when you download the package to your IDE's, agent. And it's just, a new industry standard. And I bet that if it does become like that, the libraries that jump on it first are going to have better downloads. They're going to become the de facto standards. Maybe VS Code will probably bake it in as a feature or a functionality of the IDE itself. Yeah, this seems like a really good idea.
Yeah. You can even imagine having like that, how we have like @types/ for the libraries that haven't gotten to the program yet and aren't like fully TypeScripted.
Yep.
It'd be nice, just have like, @docs/ and then that, and then you can have the community come in and say, oh, okay, cool. We parsed through all the documentation for this version and created a markdown file, and here you go. It's published as @docs or whatever, and that works. I would say that like the current implementation, having done it for React Router, is pretty janky. A little, not my implementation. My implementation is great, but like what I did was I just went and grabbed all of the markdown from the docs, and then I actually had to convert that into TypeScript. I had to take all that markdown and create one big old string template, or a couple of them actually, and then that's what you export, and then you convert that into JavaScript, and you export that, and it's like that's how Vibe Rules wants to work. What I think might be easier would be to have like a specific like well-known directory in the published package. It's like /docs, something like that, right? It's basically, hey, here's all the markdown, maybe some front matter, whatever. Like that was actually a cool thing. Like you also get to say like what you give it globs of the different types of the files that it applies to. Like you can say, hey, these rules only apply to like source/route/ star.tsx or whatever.
Oh,
yeah. So that's cool.
So I'm a little confused. What is it when you run Vibe Rules? Because you said it looks at your dependencies and like plucks out something for LLMs. Yeah. What specifically is it looking at? What is it? Because I thought it would look for like an LLM.tech or LLM.text or LLM.markdown.
It looks for this. So every module, every NPM module can have multiple exports to it, which is interesting. Like you don't really see this all the time. Like most have just like main. But you can actually have multiple exports, and one of those exports, you can name them whatever you want. So their standard is like their export is ./LLMs, and you give it like here are the types for it, here's the main for it, and so what it does, I think it kind of runs it. Or imports it, and then it goes and actually gets like an array out of it, and that array includes like here are all the globs, here's all the documentation, blah 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 blah. And then what it's doing is it's saying, okay, for cursor, it needs to be in this directory and formatted this way. For Claude code, it needs to be over in this directory and formatted this way. And so it's doing the work of trying to figure out like, hey, cool, you've given me the documentation and enough metadata around it so I know what it is. I'm actually going to handle like compatibility with Windsurf and Cursor because, of course, all these IDEs are doing it entirely differently.
Yeah.
I see now. It's got this section in its README how it finds rules, and it walks through this a little bit. Yeah, this is more than I realized this thing was doing, and I guess that's cool. Maybe it's a little janky. I guess we'll I guess we'll see. I think they're onto something here, though.
Yeah.
And
The way I did it was I just did whatever Redwood SDK did, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow the pattern.
Follow the pattern. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Establish the norms if they're not there yet.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, my news for this week is Angular 20, which is a pretty big release for them. A lot of the stuff in here is stuff that's not necessarily new, but it's either getting more stable or new features added to it. So the first thing they talk about is signals, which is a feature that shipped back in Angular 16. A lot of the signal stuff is already stable and released, but some of their new APIs, effect, link signal, and toSignal are now stable. The one thing I learned from their write-up is I knew that TC39 was working on like a standardized signals for JavaScript itself, but actually they're using Angular signals as a reference implementation for the one that might end up in JavaScript itself. So that's pretty cool. And so more of signals is stable in Angular 20, which is cool. The next feature is that their zoneless preview is now, their zoneless implementation is now in a developer preview. So the background here, if you're not an Angular person, is that Angular uses this zone.js file, and they use it for a whole lot, for change detection, error handling. It's mostly for change detection. And now that they have this signals-based implementation, this zone thing is kind of, in a way, unnecessary. But the thing is, it's been very baked into Angular since Angular 2. It's kind of fundamental to how the thing worked. So it's not the easiest thing for them to just completely rip out. So they've talked about zoneless in previous releases. With this release, they're calling it now a developer preview. So there's some improvements to it. Now, when you start a new Angular project, one of the things the CLI will ask you is whether you want it to be zoneless or not. It's going to default to still using Zone.js, but you have a way now, an easier way to opt into this and try it. So if you're an Angular person, you have an Angular app, it might be time to just start experimenting with this. It's not stable yet, but it sounds like it's a pretty big priority and that they're working on it. They talk about Angular on the server, so that they are polishing their server-side rendering features, incremental hydration, route level rendering mode configuration. Those features are both stable. They talk about how they're focusing a lot on some of these server-side features, which is cool because for the longest time, this was one thing Angular was lacking compared to sort of the React ecosystem, is there were less options for some of these server-side tools. So it sounds like they're working on them more. I have not tried any of this. The last Angular version I used in a serious way was Angular 8 or 9. And at the time, it was very much a client-side only type of framework. So I've not tried with any of these, but they look pretty cool and interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see. Thank you for covering this, because I saw the Angular 20 thing and I hadn't even really looked into it at all. But so good to hear. I should probably look into this hydration thing, because I know that for a while they were looking at like a kind of a quick, very partial hydration stuff, where it's like optimistically, it was like hydrating only what you need when you need it. So the page is ultra fast. I don't know if they got there with that, but it would be interesting to see where they got to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's called incremental hydration.
Oh, so, there you go. So maybe.
So probably, and it's now considered stable. So if you want to look into it for video purposes, I'd say now would be a pretty good time to do it.
For the 3 people that do Angular that watch my channel, yeah, great.
Angular is still a big deal. I mean, it's
not my channel though. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
YouTube pigeonholes you and pigeonhole me into like React. So
yeah. And then the last feature I'll mention, there's a lot in this blog post. So if you are an Angular person, obviously you'll want to read through this in detail. But the last one I flagged and noticed is that they've been working with the Chrome DevTools team, and there's now some Angular specific profiling that's directly in the performance panel in the Chrome DevTools.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of my first reaction as well. Just because the Chrome DevTools have not really done framework specific.
Yeah, there should be,
Right.
and they have extension points, and there's been React Dev tools and things like that
Sure.
use those extension points.
And Angular
Come
has
on,
their own
man! Not
extension
because you're in
too.
the same
Yeah.
company, you don't get to do that.
Yeah, it shows up with like a little Angular logo, and I have not tried this yet. I don't have a production Angular app handy to test it out with, but I don't know. It's they said they've collaborated with the Chrome DevTools team to integrate Angular specific profiling data directly into the performance panel. I see the screenshots in their blog post show like a little Angular logo popping up in there. So I don't know how I feel about this. It's kind of shady that they get special access to the Chrome team because Google, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. But you said there is also a new Angular mascot, TJ?
Well, I saved the best for last. The most important news that came out of this release is that they are working on a mascot. And have you two seen their mascot options yet? Have you looked at them? Okay. We are going to take a second. We're going to put these in. I'm going to find our
Discord
our chat here real quick, because this is important.
This
is important stuff. So
Okay.
you got to scroll down a little bit in here. They, like I said, this release is pretty big. When you see the little characters, you'll know.
Hold on, I got to bypass the Medium membership stuff.
Yeah, I don't know why they're still publishing on Medium. Like,
Right?
you're freaking Google. Like, you can't,
right?
Don't you have your own?
developer blogs?
Good Lord, yeah.
I don't.
Wow, how far down is this? Oh my God. What is that?
So
It's got
the
like,
fir-
it's
That's
got
like
like various drafting views of this
Characters.
thing.
Yeah.
There are
That's
three
a-
characters. The first one is just referred to as angular shaped character. And
Character. Okay.
the second two are based off the anglerfish, which okay, so in a way, like, I get why they anglerfish, okay, like I get where they came from, but have either of you seen an anglerfish or like
Those
a picture
things
of it?
Ugly.
They are terribly
super
ugly.
terrifying.
Terribly ugly. Yes.
It's got to be the most hideous creature on planet Earth.
Oh, I
It's-
don't know about that. Have
It's
you seen the
up there,
ugliest
though.
dog competitions? Really?
Have you seen an anglerfish?
I know. It's
They're really bad.
It's close. Okay.
All
right.
I don't know. Like, I guess like they like the angular bit of it, but I mean, I don't know. It's a weird choice. I mean, I guess it's a cute little character, but I liked just the first one, the angular shaped character the most.
Yeah. It reminds me of a Dungeons and Dragons dice. It's like one of those multi-sided dice. But yeah, if I had to choose between these three, that's the one I would go for.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. They have an RFC for their mascot, so you can go and you can vote or you can give in-depth feedback if you want. But I don't know. I thought it was. I guess they feel like this many years into Angular, this is the time they need to introduce a mascot. I mean, I'm all for it. I'm a big fan of mascots, so I enjoyed looking through this.
Yeah, they need a mascot. Every good framework has one.
What's the React mascot?
Yeah, what's the React
I
one?
was just
Or the
thinking,
Vue
does
one?
Next? I don't know if Next.
No,
I don't think Next does
they haven't-
either.
They have the ominous triangle, thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
What's the best, like, what is front end wise? What are our mascots? Do we even like really
Dino
have?
Dino,
The
man.
Dino
My
Dino.
wife's
Oh,
all
Dino is very
my
good.
wife's all
Yeah.
over the Dino Dino. Literally, I have like communicated with the Dino team specifically to get my wife a Dino shirt because she,
nice.
because
The
she
RS
liked the old Dino Dino.
Yeah, the RS libs with the little crab. That's a cute one. They just keep
Oh
like
yeah,
they give the crab a
is
hat.
good too.
Well, when
Or
they're
it's
not
got a
like
little
trying to
wand.
kill you for like using the Rust logo without their permission or whatever, Jeez.
Yeah. We
but
need more
it-
mascots.
Get your votes in. I think the first one's going to win. I looked over the like RFC thread and most of the votes were for number one. So I think our little like D20 little dude is probably gonna be the winner.
I don't know what he's doing in like the third panel though, when you kind of see him from behind and he's thinking about water or something.
Yeah, I don't
looks
know.
like a
What is he
sweat,
doing?
like an anime sweat, but he's talking about it. So
Right. Oh, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Working up a sweat, baby, in my octagonal hot suit. Some
Yeah.
poor guy, poor person is going to have to show up in this
Oh,
at
yeah,
AngularCon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yep.
Just thinking. Just saying.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Take
That's
your
because you're
photo
not
with
that
him.
guy.
Right.
Oh, I'm too tall.
know.
They'd never pick me to be
Oh,
that
that's
guy.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Right. So, and what are you going to be talking to? I'm just trying to work out the dynamics of this. You got this diamond shaped suit. The guy's head is up at the top, right? The mouth is down at the bottom. I'm just saying, like, it's going to. Okay, anyway.
Where are you looking when you're talking to this thing? That's a good question.
That's okay.
I think we'll leave it there. So Angular 20.
Okay, moving on.
New mascot and some pretty cool features. And speaking of cool and new, we have a new sound effect for the lightning round.
All right.
And we're a little torn on it, but we're going to play it real quick, and then we'll see what everybody thinks. I don't know. Like, I like the little jingle, but I don't know if it fits in with the other sound effects.
Right,
but
exactly.
I don't know. We'll go with it for now. Let us know in the YouTube comments your thoughts on the lightning round sound. Maybe we'll do a version 2 next week. We'll see.
As creators, I gotta say, sound is uniquely hard to get right.
Yes.
I don't know what it is,
my
but
God.
it's ridiculous. You spend all your time on sound.
Yeah. The people who do music for like television shows and movies and stuff like that, I am so in awe of how well they pair different music with different, points of inflection within shows.
I have a lot more respect for really well edited podcasts now after having done this for a while, like people that can seamlessly weave in sound and all of this. So, but anyways, lightning round, we've got a lot in here. Remix 3 is in the news again. We talked about Remix last week. I feel like we can't stop talking about Remix. So last week
They won't let us stop.
Last week we covered a leaked blog post.
Right.
And it turns out the leaked
we're on the
blog
cutting
post
edge.
was real, I guess.
Pretty accurate. Yeah.
Pretty accurate. They published not that exact thing, but they published an update this week, and it basically confirms what we had known about. React Router is going to be the sort of successor of Remix 2, which is kind of already in place. It's going to be getting RSC support. But Remix 3 is like completely new. It's apparently starting as a fork of Preact. And I don't know, like, I guess, Jack, what more do you know about this? Is there any more detail, or are we just kind of in like wait and see what Ryan and Michael cook up at this point?
Yeah, so it's an interesting read. So it's Wake Up Remix, and it's got like a rising sun CD-ROM or something like that as their logo or whatever.
CD-ROM,
because that's where everybody's at right now. And yeah, so basically they're saying, hey, listen, React Router is going to go on to this thing, added RSC into that kind of sort of. It's just really a POC. I don't know, whatever. So that's going to continue on, and then they've got this like basically thing. It's not really Remix because there's going to be no compatibility between Remix V2 and V3.
Yeah,
they've pre-decided on Preact, even though down at the bottom of this thing they've got this whole principles thing where they got like 6 principles of what they want to see in this Remix V3 thing. And one of which is model first development, which is supposed to be like, hey, and I actually did a tweet on this. This is how I interpreted your kind of speak about this. And it is very much like they want to help you create Jarvis, right? That's their idea, right? And then the other 5 items are all about like building a hyper performant, web framework, kind of similar to like a Solid or a Quick or a Fresh, something that's like super lightweight. And those 2 things seem entirely at odds to me. Like, how could you do create the Jarvis framework that could just be crazy, huge, whatever, yada yada, and also like the lightweight trim thing? I just don't even. So I'm really confused by this, and I wish them the best, but I'm very confused.
Yeah, it's no small undertaking to say we're throwing away even like the low-level framework. I guess building on off Preact is something. If they said they're building off a fork of Preact too, so they're, who knows? But I will say those guys have a pretty good track record, Ryan and Michael. So we'll see what they come up with, and we'll definitely let you know on the show what they cook up and where it goes.
It is funny to see Evan Yu over on X, basically talking directly to these guys and saying, "Hey, what you want to do in terms of like a Vite style thing where it's all just zero dependencies and blah 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 blah. We tried that and it didn't really work. So it's just funny to see like that kind of interchange.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that they are down on React and they're like, we're moving away from it, we're breaking up with it, and then they say we're going to use Preact because Preact is a very slimmed down version of React. I thought they were really going like completely different JavaScript framework or no framework, we're making our own. But it doesn't really seem like that much of a departure if you're just going from one flavor of React to another smaller flavor of React.
And really, I mean, it's basically React minus RSCs. It's still got hooks. There's a lot of compatibility code in React to keep up with older browsers and stuff. That was really what you gave away when you went to Preact, was just that the code that would do that compatibility. But otherwise, it's still React. It's still got a VDOM, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
We shall see.
We shall see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next lightning round item, Paige, I think there's a new survey from Stack Overflow you wanted to bring up.
There is. Have either of you been on Stack Overflow since like AI became pretty good?
I mean, occasionally, but like maybe like 15, 20% of the way I used to use it.
Yeah. Like I remember Googling every day, multiple times per day, and ending up back there looking at somebody's code or responses or things like that. And I can't really remember to the last time that I was there for any length of time, but they're still around. And they have a new annual developer survey out that they would love for everybody to take. And if you feel like taking another survey and talking about your favorite frameworks and how you're using Stack Overflow, presumably, and how you're using AI.
Your favorite podcast?
Your favorite podcast? Go take it. Because I'm sure they're looking for people and they're probably hurting in terms of page views and could use the boost.
This one in the past has been pretty good because it's not tied to a certain ecosystem. So this is probably my favorite survey for just greater software development sort of thing, to keep tabs on how is Python doing or Java doing or whatever. So I've taken this one before and I've looked at it the last few years and it's a pretty good one. It's quite good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've really started using Claude for search. Like it was just the past couple of weeks. It's like anytime I have a thing where I do want to do some research, I just fire up a new project with Claude. I'm like, hey, I'm working on this. Let's have a chat about it. And it goes off and makes a lot of searches and stuff. And it's just great. It's fantastic.
So are you using Claude with like an MCP for Perplexity or just whatever Claude already knows? That's what you're talking to Claude about?
Claude can go and do searches now on its own. Doesn't need Perplexity.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Although I guess I could add, I was actually thinking about doing this just recently. I was firing up Perplexity, adding it as an MCP server, and seeing kind of a taste test, like does it do better or whatever. But no, it does a really good job of like, okay, I'll ask it, hey, we're thinking about doing this or whatever. Go and do a competitive analysis, and it'll go off and make all the searches, come back and say, oh, these are, here's the competitors in that space. It's really cool.
Nice.
I've been using ChatGPT kind of as search for the most part. Not always. I've got like an algorithm in my head of when to go to Google, when to go to ChatGPT. And over time, it's becoming more ChatGPT than Google, because the thing ChatGPT specifically is good at now is it will bring in links for things. So if it's a question that you're kind of unsure about, you just click the links and check through, check through on that.
Yeah.
And
same thing with Claude.
It just contextualizes things so much better than Google, when it's just, vomit of all sorts of slop and everything. So I don't know, it's interesting times we live in.
Yeah,
It
I
really
saw
is.
that recently with ChatGPT where it has little source links and then you can like hover them and it'll show you and it'll show you like multiple ones I've seen too. If there's like different supporting pieces and in its response, it'll like highlight different parts of the response for it and like which link came for where. Yeah, it's impressive and hopefully less hallucinatory based on the fact that it's citing things.
Yep.
Gotta hand it to Google though for being around the point of the curve there by having their search results have an AI response. And originally, I was like, does that make sense? And now seeing what ChatGPT and Claude have done to kind of create essentially like a project-based search, if they hadn't done that, they would look like the Stone Age at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their AI overviews. They have this AI mode that we talked about on the show that is now out. I think you still have to like opt in at the moment, but it's available and people can try it. And they say that their features from AI mode that work will be promoted into the main search, and that's kind of their model moving forward. So they're innovating. They're trying to keep up with this. They're not just kind of resting on their laurels, right? That's the saying.
Right,
They're,
resting on their laurels. But
yeah.
that's for a company the size of Google, like that's saying something.
Well, that makes all of their money from search, right?
Well, that's true too.
I was just going to say, I read an article recently, and it was by a person who is an SEO expert, and they were talking about how Google has basically turned the whole world of SEO on its head by doing this. Because, before you knew that if you had good keywords and if you got good click-through rates, you would probably end up fairly high in the search results for Google. But now, because of the way that they're starting to use AI and LLMs to kind of determine what your search results are going to be, there's no way that the websites can keep up with it. And really, it's like he said at one point, it's almost like Google is trying to limit the time that you're actually off of their platform and in somebody else's website. They just want to give you the information and keep you on Google's own .com page. And it is, when you start to think about it, that is absolutely what they're doing. Like, if they can give you AI overviews and you never actually click the links and go to these different websites to verify or just read further, wow. Yeah. What is it going to look like in a couple years?
And they're still like, so in AI mode, they show ads. So they have like a plan here because basically they say a lot of these searches, they can't show ads for anyways, because there's certain things that people look for that no advertiser is gonna want, right? If you ask like a math question or just like a history question.
Your mind went there. Okay.
Yeah. Or like who won the Stanley Cup last year? Like
that's what
people just want an answer. They don't want to go to some web page with 50 ads on it. So, all right, we got two last lightning round ones. These ones I think actually will be lightning. There's a new version of Firefox, and I'm excited for this because it is the first browser, Firefox, the first browser to ship temporal support.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the basically improved date APIs as part of JavaScript. But I mean, the real news here is Firefox got there first. Clearly Firefox now, the trend-setting browser, leading edge on web standards, as we all know.
Well, I think the most interesting part about this is that it was not a Firefox employee or team who actually got it in. It was just some guy, one single guy who's
dude,
just a contributor, volunteer who actually got temporal into Firefox.
That is amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah. Just one
awesome.
Guy.
Yeah. You can change the world, y'all. And now he's got it on his resume forever. I added temporal to Firefox. Hello. You want to hire me? Of course you do.
Yeah. Firefox now just needs a few more of those guys to keep this up, to keep the browser running and keeping up. So that is in. The last lightning news item is that Bolt's hackathon, which we've talked about a few times on this podcast. Bolt has a hackathon where they are giving away $1 million. They're marketing it very heavily as the world record setting hackathon. It is kicking off tomorrow as we record this. And a couple details about this that I found fascinating. The first is that it is a month-long hackathon. I missed that detail when we first talked about it.
Yeah.
But that really like stretches the definition of what a hackathon is. Because that is quite a time period. And then the second detail is that in their email where they were talking about it that I just got right before we started recording this, is they said they have over 50,000 entrants. And as someone who's judged hackathons before, I don't even know what you do with that. Like
right. Like you usually get like 7.
How do you judge that?
Yeah.
That's so many pitches.
You have to have AI filtering. I mean, the literal mechanics of this. And then there's the whole verification thing because they have to use Bolt and they have to use it to a certain degree or something. Mm-hmm. It's just they're the dog that caught the car because they've got a nightmare ahead of them, assuming that like even 10% of these folks deliver. You got 5,000 entries to go and search through. Mm-hmm. Come on.
I think there'll be some degree of just like you make 2 or 3 second decisions on these entries. Like there's certain ones you'll just exclude right away because they just don't look complete or whatever. Because it's also like these apps, like I said, when I've judged hackathons before, sometimes it's like you have to figure out if you're going to truly judge them, you have to figure out how to run them, which isn't always easy. And I guess maybe that's their first filter, like bring it up in Bolt. And if it doesn't start up immediately, just say like, oh, move on to the next one.
Yeah, this one's just Sonnet 4 playing Pokemon. Oh, wait, no, that's an actual thing that companies do. Hold on. No, that's a real thing. Has it made it out of the cave yet? Do we even know?
It's definitely out of the cave. I checked in on it.
Congratulations.
I checked on it right before this. It is not.
We need to make this as a lightning round update. Like,
it's not made it past. It's been too new because Claude 4 has just gotten started on its journey. Keeping in mind it takes forever to do anything, but it has not made it further than the 3.7 one yet. If it does,
so 3.7 also made it out of the cave. Okay,
3.7 made it out of the cave eventually. It just took like 2 days to do so, and this one's made it a little bit further. I will report back if there are any consequential updates on Claude 4's Pokemon journey. But let's talk about what's making us happy.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Jack, what is making you happy this week?
Well, last week I talked about how we're going to see the Portland Pickles, and we did. For Red Haired Appreciation Day. I did not get to run the bases, sadly. I stood in line, but the cutoff was before I got into the park, but it's very sad. Yeah, I mean, it happens. But I was wrong that it was I thought it was minor league. Turns out it's actually much, much lower than that. It's not even A ball, whatever. It's actually college ball. It's a college summer league. And so these are college kids, and you can actually, there is a whole thing around, you can adopt a pickle. So you can actually like have one of them stay at your house for the summer league, which we're actually kind of considering because, whatever, we have a spare room, why not, and that sort of thing. And it's, it was just super fun. There are people that showed up with their dogs, and there's, obviously Dylan the pickle mascot is running around doing crazy stuff, and there's people like, doing dizzy bat where they put their head on a bat and spin around and try and go get some kombucha or whatever. It's just hilarious, and it's at this tiny little park in our town. It's like the primo seats are like $25, and then the sit on the grass is like $5. It's great. It's just so much fun.
And how many redheads would you say were there, like percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise? No, not that many. I mean, like maybe 10% of the people in there were redheads.
10% of people is like significally more than you would expect.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't. I got to say, when I was standing in line, this was more redheads than I'd seen it ever in my life. And, you get all the variants of the flaming fireball heads and yada, yada. And it was just, so are redheads dying out? Yeah, probably so. But, it was nice to have, our little moment in the pickle sunshine there.
Very cool.
That sounds like more fun, actually, than a major league game in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's there's no parking stress or anything like that. Although you don't want to park too close to the ballpark because I'll be honest, like one guy fouled and it went off and hit a car. Another guy, oh wow, yeah, actually one guy lost control of the bat and it went over the fence, hit the dugout, and then bounced off and went into the crowd, which is kind of fun. Yeah, so it's a fun experience. It's got all the elements there, but it's definitely not pro game, and it is nowhere near as heavy, and it's great that way.
It's crazy how, so this is an extremely random story, but I used to work for a company that had a big office in Bulgaria, and we had some of the Bulgarians come to visit, and we went to an NBA basketball game.
Oh, cool.
Because one of them was a big basketball fan. Basketball is big in Eastern Europe, and a lot of like Eastern European players are in the NBA now.
And all those guys, yeah.
But we went to this game, and the thing that fascinated them the most was that when the game wasn't on, well, they were fascinated by how much time the commercial breaks took. And then second, how many gimmicky things the stadium does to try to entertain people during those commercial breaks. Because this is apparently something this concept does not reach Eastern Europe, at least not in any significant way. But like American audiences apparently need to be entertained every second. So like every time the play stops, there's some mascot running onto the floor, or cheerleaders, or they're having kids race, or they're whatever. They're trying to fill every last second, and apparently to a European visitor, that is quite amusing.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've also been to a Portland Thorns game, which is a soccer game, and there was zero color commentary. It was like if they made a goal, that was when you'd hear the announcers say something. Other than that, it was pretty much, just the crowd murmuring, yay, whatever. And it was like, wow, that's interesting. That's not like football. You go to football and it's like every single play is like, blah, 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 blah thing. And this was so much closer to the European thing where like they didn't really talk. They didn't even announce balls and strikes. It was like, they would talk, like they'd have the music when the guy came up and that was it. And it was like they announced his name and everybody would go, yeah, so-and-so, you go, guy. And it was like, that's it. That's all, And it was, other than that, you were just kind of, yelling at the ump or whatever.
Well, soccer works that way because the play doesn't stop. Like you don't have a football part of the reason you do that is, well, the game stops every few seconds.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
Then there's like a 4-minute break for beer commercials to come on. And so you got a lot of time to fill in just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only time that football or soccer stops is that the guys fall over. They fall over a lot too. Like I went to an Atlanta United game this past weekend, and there was 7 minutes of stoppage time after one half. Because, some guy fell over and then the medics had to come out and then eventually he limped off the field. But guys are just like constantly running into each other, and then one or both of them are suddenly on the ground just laying there, wasting time, essentially. There's a lot of that.
Those silly injuries.
It's like, oh man, I could speak for a long time about my thoughts on soccer, but I also... don't want to take forever of this. Paige, what is making you happy this week?
The annual Gloucestershire cheese rolling race is what's making me happy this week.
Everything about that is awesome.
So for anyone who has not seen this, there are links and a Wikipedia link as well, because this is a thing that has been going on, according to Wikipedia, since the mid-1800s in England, in Gloucestershire. But they put a 9-pound round cheese on the ground at the top of this hill, let it go down the hill, and then people run after it at breakneck speeds, trying to be the first to reach the bottom and catch this cheese. And it is a very, very steep hill, and people are just like, they're flying because the hill is so steep and they lose their balance, and suddenly they're just flying for yards before they hit the ground again. They're rolling. There's Superman costumes. There's people from other countries who come to compete. It's amazing that nobody has died yet. Honestly, when you watch these videos, nobody's died.
I am amazed by that because I've definitely seen videos of this, and every time I see it, I was like, how are people not like carted off in stretchers constantly because
Well, dying and carting off in stretchers there's got to be some stretcher action going on there. I mean, you cannot. Like,
well, I saw as I was looking for a good article to share for this morning that 2 people did end up going to the hospital afterwards. But I mean, people they're falling onto their heads. They're flying for meters before they hit the ground. They're rolling. They're tumbling. It's amazing that nobody has died.
Yeah, it's not for me. I don't have that thrill seeker gene. I'm happy to just watch.
Yeah. But it is incredibly entertaining. You have to watch and just some of the interviews that BBC does, because BBC covered this. Like, this is a regular news event over there. But some of the interviews and the comments from the people who won or the people who didn't win but were still interviewed, or just the videos themselves, are amazing to watch. They're hilarious.
Yeah, they got the full like British humor going on. It's quite good. Yeah.
And I can't believe that they do this yearly. And, they've tried to stop it in the past, but it's become tradition. And so the town's going to keep on doing it regardless of what health and safety thinks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what is making me happy this week is a book called The God of the Woods. I ended up on this because I was on a bad streak where I was reading a lot of sort of mystery type novels. And the last one I talked about on our interview show about a book I was reading called I Think I Was Murdered, which was about like an AI bot. And that one didn't end up being all that great of a book, unfortunately, which continued my bad streak. So what I decided to do is I went into Storygraph, which is a app that I use to track just books I've read and whatnot. And it has recommendations built into it. So I went to the mysteries category and I just said, I'm going to read whatever it puts in that first slot. Just try it. Why not? And I did, and it was good. It was the book called The God of the Woods. It's a story of 2 kids disappearing, and the book follows 2 different timelines. So it's told one kid disappears in the 60s and then another one in the 70s. And it follows basically you go back and forth between timelines, which is a really fun storytelling mechanism for a mystery book. And setting it in the 60s and 70s is also probably a smart move because what I've noticed is someone who's read a lot of mystery books here recently is that modern ones always have to find some contrived scenario to explain why smartphones don't immediately end the situation.
Phones, can't use internet. Yep.
So you're always like in a remote cabin, or like the power goes down, or you're on a ship and the ship breaks down, or something has to happen. Yeah. But like back in the 60s and 70s, it's like, a kid could just get lost.
and 1,000%.
Easy, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit more believable. And I don't know, it was just I thought it was a really well written story. So if you're into that sort of thing, it has my recommendation.
Nice.
I was Googling while you were talking about the cheese race, and I got totally obsessed, by the way, with the Red Bull soapbox racing for a little bit.
Oh, that's so fun to watch.
So good. Like that and the Flugzeug, which is their one where they take a plane, they try and get it. Those are hilarious.
They are.
Yeah. You see people just crashing out. It's great. And color commentary is awesome.
Very cool. I think that is our episode. I think we went on long enough. Our lightning round was a little less lightning this week. We had a lot to cover, though. It was a very fun week.
Yeah, it's big news week.
The front end world. So if you're into this stuff, check us out next week. We do this every week. And have a good one, everybody.
See you next week.
See you then.